Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Nick Gaglia. I'm a 26-year-old filmmaker. My feature film debut, WOR Radio, is very relevant to the topic of discussion here today. It's based on my 2.5-year experience in an abusive, tough love drug rehab back in the late 90s. I chose to make a film based on this topic for the same reason why I'm here today, to give the kids who have been abused and still are being abused a voice.
You can guarantee that you'll take care of our son.
Well, you know what? You guys gotta rest assured that we know what we're doing, and the kids take care of the kids.
Bring him down. Bring him down. Anthony! Anthony, look at me. Look at me, open your eyes. I told you to be compliant, didn't I?
And Nick has put together this phenomenal panel of speakers, and my heart is so touched that each and every one of you are here today. And I, could start crying right now because I know this is going to be really emotional, but very powerful and very needed. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming and sharing your experience and being part of this. So here's Nick.
I'm a filmmaker, I'm an activist, but I'm also a survivor of institutional abuse. I was in a place called Kids of North Jersey from 14 to 17 years old, and saw all types of experienced and saw all types of crazy abuse, which I'll get into in a little bit. When I was 17, I got out because I escaped. I have a very special relationship in my life with Monsignor Walter, who I met 10 years ago when I was looking for a location to shoot my first feature film, Over the GW. Which is loosely based on my 2.5-year stay in an abusive cult-like drug rehabilitation center in New Jersey. And the reason why I wanted to make the film outside of being passionate about filmmaking is not a lot of people really know about institutional child abuse, and I felt a responsibility to get the word out there and to raise awareness. And that's why I just knew I needed to make my first feature on that topic. Like I said, we hardly had any money. We didn't have any budget for locations, but we wanted a level of authenticity. And the rehab, we were in a room that was essentially 4 white walls, no windows, all day, all night. And I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, who also happened to be one of the stars of the film, Heather, and she said, what if we looked at parish halls? And I was like, oh, but where are we gonna find someone who's gonna lend us all that? And she goes, let's just get out there, let's do it, let's shop around and see what we could come up with. And it was that attitude that led us to Monsignor Walter.
I was pastor at Epiphany Parish on the east side, East 22nd Street. And my parishioner, Heather, came up to me and saying, my friend is looking for some space, like a hall, and preferably a place that has a bathroom. You always need a bathroom. Yeah. I thought it was a practicality. I said, yeah, we have some. I didn't know it was going to be part of the scene, an integral part of the scene. But, okay, so we met at that very basic level of needs and so on. So it was then that it was just purely offering space and hospitality, which is part of my pastoral modus operandi, is to be hospitable and to also to foster anything that's positive, especially for people who have no budget or low budget. I subsequently found out that he's a filmmaker and this is going to be used as a film, so I was very happy with that because while now I'm retired, I'm devoting myself full-time to the media ministry, spreading the gospel through the electronic and digital media. But at that time, we had a full-fledged studio at Epiphany Church. Thanks to Corey, my colleague, we had wired that whole church to be a studio. Right. And as a result, accumulated a lot of expertise. So it was pretty much at home that anyone involved in the media should come. And I was very happy that his project was going to be something that's a positive contribution. So that's how we met and continued since then.
Hi, Tony. I'm James. Come on! It's gonna be okay.
You sure?
Take you for a cup of coffee? We can talk? Okay.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah.
I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and my parents were divorced at an early age. My father was an alcoholic, and that type of dynamic definitely causes significant issues on the family. And at age 13, I started drinking. I started smoking marijuana, and by 14, I was definitely getting into a lot of trouble. I needed some sort of help, some sort of therapy, and my mother found a place in New Jersey called The Kids, which claimed to be this revolutionary rehab, the only place in the world that is really successful in keeping kids sober and alive. And my mom drank the Kool-Aid and she put me in there, and that was the beginning of my 2.5 years of hell. According to them, I'm a failure because I should still be in there. It was a cult, they wanted to keep people in forever. There's big money in keeping kids sick. If you're under the age of 18, humans in the US don't have the constitutional right to sign themselves out of a place, and we were trapped in there incommunicado to the outside world. We couldn't talk to anyone. There's no hotline to some third party saying, hey, what's going on? There's something bad going on, and we were never allowed to speak to our families unsupervised, which is a big red flag if a parent is looking to looking for a place for their kid to get help.
My name is Sally Bacon, and one of the main reasons I'm here is just to say I'm Aaron Bacon's mother. I don't often get to say that anymore, Aaron was this brilliant young man who showed up in life. He stood up for what he believed in. He dared to be different. He dared to challenge authority in the most respectful way. He was admired by his peers and teachers. He was a writer. Writing was his life, and he was articulate. And then the summer of 8th grade, going into his freshman year, he started lying to me and smoking pot. I didn't know how to help Aaron. I didn't know what to do for him. And someone told me about North Star Expedition, somebody from the private school that he had gone to. So we made the choice to send him.
I miss my family so much. My hands, my lips, and my face are dead.
You guys didn't hike 2 miles. And it's because of Aaron. You're a pain. I want you to do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups. Let me see you do 100 jumping jacks. Move your butt a little bit. This is not a retirement home. It's a place where you're recovering. Jumping jacks, come on. Look at him again. Hey!
calls.
What we learned was that there's actually an industry that abuses kids in the name of love, and in the name of therapy, and in the name of helping, and it was an awful awakening. Aaron was not the first death in these programs. Kathy Sutton, whose daughter Michelle had died a few years before Aaron, was the first person to awaken us to the fact that, well, you know, this is not uncommon. And Aaron was not the last death in these programs. There have been way too many deaths. And
to this day. This was 20 years ago Aaron died.
Yeah, since then. And our hope is that we have opportunities like the one that we have today to awaken parents to the risks that are involved in these programs.
I just remember the long process of the intake. Everything seemed so foreign to me, very much like Twilight Zone. There were no windows. There were everything white walls. Everyone was dressed the same. I remember being introduced to the group and not being able to spot my brother because everyone just looked the same, had the same look, and there was a diverse background of people in there, but everyone had that same vacant look, and I couldn't spot my brother.
My sister escaped after 10 months, and they told me she was on the street doing crack, and I could never speak to her ever again for the rest of my life, or I would go back to doing drugs. And that's another very cultist thing. That out of all the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the psychological abuse, that was the hardest thing to swallow, because I love my family more than anything, and I would never turn my back on them for any reason. That's just not who I am. So I sat there in a deep depression for about 1.5 years, and I thought, let me just rot away in here. At least I'm not affecting my family like they say my sister is. And I hope she's okay. But I really believe the worst of the worst of the worst, like they said. And then one day, after being in there for 2.5 years, I'm sitting with my eyes closed, and I had a vision that felt more real to me than anything I ever experienced in my entire life. And I don't know where the vision came from. I don't know if it was a guardian angel, Jesus, or my grandfather who passed away. I don't know who or what or where it came from, but I do know it felt more real than anything. And the vision was that my sister wasn't on the street doing crack. She actually never did another drug, since she left, and she was graduating high school and about to go to college. And if I leave, I will be okay. And that gave me the strength to escape. No one was coming to get me. And from there, I devised a plan. I escaped in one of their cars, going to a host home one night, going over the GW bridge. And the first thing I found out when I got out was that the vision was completely true. My sister just graduated high school, valedictorian nonetheless, and got accepted into Columbia University.
I'm going to read because when I start to tell my daughter Erica's story, I just need to read. This is the testimony that I gave in front of Congressman Miller's first set of hearings in 2007. My daughter Erica was an amazing kid, and everyone says that about their own, but it's true, she was. So many times during Erica's too short life, she'd do or say or create something that just knocked our socks off. She was an incredible student with straight A's, gifted classes in math and language. She was a competitive springboard diver with dozens of medals. Erica was a musician who played clarinet and drums, a prize-winning visual artist, a weekly volunteer with a local animal shelter from the time she was 10, and she dragged us along. So they got 2, 3, or 4 for the price of one determined little girl. But Erica's bright lights seemed to flicker when at 14 and in the 8th grade, she began to experience mental health problems. Erica became depressed and then suicidal. She engaged in cutting behaviors, and to medicate herself, she began abusing illegal drugs. Erica was hurting in many ways, and our whole family, there were 4 of us. Erica had a younger sister, Brianna. Our whole family was suffering. Erica was in the care of a psychiatrist and a therapist who both recommended that we consider a residential treatment program. On May 26, 2002, we arrived at the Catherine Freer, Nevada office. We had been advised by Catherine Freer not to tell Erica we were placing her until our arrival for the family meeting that would begin the trek. Of all the many profound and tormenting regrets we have about our terrible decision, agreeing to deceive Erica is one of the worst. When we told her why we were there, she was shocked, angry, and scared. We will be haunted as long as we live by Erica's cry of, "Please, Daddy, don't make me go." On May 27, 2002, the first full day of Erica's Nevada wilderness trek, Catherine Freer's trusted team mistook a dire medical emergency for teenage belligerence. And Erica died that afternoon of heat stroke with dehydration.
Is there some type of watchdog group that goes around and evaluates these places, or do you have to rely on government institutions to go into these places to shut them down? How do you get these places shut down?
That's a good question.
Even during the GAO hearings, with experienced investigators using data from the states and reporting agencies, they couldn't even, in 2008, they couldn't even tell the number of programs that exist. States have varying reporting rules, so they can't tell you how many incidents of abuse, death, etc. happens. So that's a big factor. You don't have programs open and close under different names. It still happens, so they can be sanctioned in one state, change names, go do what they want to do. My daughter died at the Catherine Freer program, as I said. They had 3 deaths within the span, beginning with Erica's death. Then they had another death in Nevada in October of that same year. They had a 3rd death in their Oregon program in March of 2003, and continued in business, merrily on their way.
When I was in there being restrained on the floor for 8-10-hour days at a time, and one time I was almost, they would suffocate us. I thought I was seconds away from dying, quite frankly. I knew nobody on the outside world knew what was going on. And now that I'm out, I know there's someone that's on the outside that knows what's going on. There are kids to this day that are being abused. There are kids today that are still dying in these tough love treatment centers. And fortunately, there are people on the outside world that do know what's going on, that are able to be a voice for these kids that aren't able to have one for themselves, these kids that are suffering today, these kids that are that have fallen because of this. So I would love to just say, hey, I want to make more films on the entertainment level, and I will continue to do that. And I would love to say, hey, I'm done talking about, I've talked about this topic, I've done my work, and I'd like to not go on a job interview and this come up, which happens all the time, because it's right there on the thing. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's something I feel I need to do until kids aren't being abused under the name of treatment. I won't stop talking about this. What I've noticed is when you make one film, hopefully it leads to the next, and that's been my experience. I made Over the GW, and C-SPAN airs what happens in these congressional hearings, and they also stream it.
Right.
And a businessman in China, nonetheless, was watching the hearing and heard Over the GW being discussed and was like, oh, what's this film? It sounds very interesting, and I'm passionate about raising awareness on child abuse. So the gentleman contacted me. We started a dialogue, and he flew all the way to New York to meet me and said, I want to get involved with you. I want to give you a grant that has nothing to do with making my money back. This is for you to go make the next thing on this topic, which is how my film Aaron Bacon came about, which is about Aaron's story. I wanted to explore something that I was experiencing, which is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, specifically related to institutional child abuse. So me as a young adult and as an adult struggling with sleep and nightmares and fears and paranoia that all relates back to my experience in this rehab, I wanted to explore that and exploit that in a feature film, but do it in a way that brought a different level of entertainment and do it in a more fantastical way. And that's how I created the character of Emmanuel Plain and my latest feature, Altered States of Plain. When he falls asleep, he wakes up in different parts of the world and he doesn't know why, and he's looking for answers. And in this film in particular, we see him waking up on a New York City subway, and he's looking for answers, and it's a psychological thriller. It's very cerebral. We get in his head from the very moment, and we stay there until the very end.
I was calling you because I wanted answers.
You realize that? Come on! Stay right here. You don't believe me. These are all classic symptoms of hysteria. You had a psychotic break or display of schizophrenia.
I didn't tell them! The headaches, the examinations, your frequency.
It opened in New York this weekend, and I've been doing a series of Q&As, and people in the hospital psychology industry and also professors and social workers were there, and I was curious to see if that aspect of it translated over. And these professionals were coming up to me and saying, hey, this was an excellent depiction of that. And we would love to get copies to show other people at the hospital, to show our students. So that was just incredible.
Hey guys, I want to thank everyone for coming out here to the event tonight.